Water was worth more than life on Hesper 7, and Erexa was about to pay with her arm dot. The twin suns blazed like twin furnaces in the merciless sky, their heat pressing down on Drywell until the cracked ground shimmered with mirages. Dust devils danced between rows of ramshackle stalls, carrying the sharp tang of rust and sweat. The air was thick with barter cry scraps of metal, ration packs, and most coveted of all, water. Water that glinted in metal flasks like liquid diamonds. Erexa moved like a shadow through the chaos, her emerald skin streaked with grime, her once silver hair dulled beneath a threadbare cloth wrap. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but thirst was the greater enemy. 2 days without water had left her dizzy, her limbs heavy as lead. She kept her violet eyes low, avoiding the crimson gaze of the guards that stalked the market like predators. Her father's face haunted her thoughts ashen. Skin, lips cracked and bloodied, each breath a ragged rasp. Just one flask, she told herself. Enough to keep him alive until tomorrow. The water stall loomed ahead, its wares gleaming like forbidden treasures. The merchant, fat from privilege, was deep in argument with an off-world trader, his back turned. Beside him stood Thorax the Enforcer, a towering beast of muscle and mottled red-gray skin, his armor plates scarred from countless battles. His fingers drummed idly on the hilt of his blade, and Erexa's pulse quickened. Everyone knew Thorax. His punishments were swift, brutal, and final. When the merchant leaned in to count a stack of credit chips, Erexa moved. Her fingers slid across the counter like whispers, closing around a small metal flask. Cool against her palm, it felt like salvation. She tucked it into the folds of her rags and turned away. A shadow fell over her. Well, well, a voice rumbled like distant thunder. Her blood ran cold. Thorax loomed, his hand clamping around her wrist with bone-crushing force. The flask tumbled free, clattering against the dust with a sound that seemed to echo for miles. Conversations faltered. The market fell into a tense, watching silence. "Please," she whispered, though she knew it was useless. Thorax yanked her forward, his grip like an iron shackle. Thieves get what thieves deserve. His crimson eyes burned with cruel satisfaction. As he drew his blade, a wicked curve of steel that caught the sunlight in a lethal shimmer. "No!" Her voice broke as he slammed her arm against a wooden post, pinning it flat. Her heart pounded in her ears. Around them, no one moved, no one spoke. On Hesper 7, water was law, and the law was merciless. The blade rose high, ready to sever flesh from bone. "Stop!" The voice cracked like a plasma shot across the marketplace. Sharp, commanding, human. Thorax froze. The crowd parted as a figure strode forward through the heat haze, his steps slow, deliberate. A man tall, bare-chested, his sun-bronzed skin slick with sweat that glimmered like molten gold. His cargo pants hung low on lean hips, utility belt heavy with gear. Muscles coiled and shifted beneath his skin with every step, but it was his eyes that seized Erexa's breath blue, clear as the sacred water pools in the canyon caves. Eyes that held storms. "This doesn't concern you, human," Thorax growled. But for the first time, doubt edged his tone. The man didn't flinch. His gaze swept over Erexa, then locked on Thorax with calm steel. "I'm making it my concern." And in that moment under the burning suns, with death poised above her wrist, Erexa's fate shifted forever. Asterisk, the blade lingered in the air. A frozen arc of death, as every eye in the marketplace shifted to the human who had spoken. Heat shimmered around him, waves of light bending, as though even the air bowed to his presence. Logan Brett moved closer, each step quiet yet heavy with intent, his boots crunching on the dry, cracked ground. Erexa could barely breathe. Her heart thudded against her ribs, wild as a trapped animal. She didn't know this man. No one did off-worlders, rarely came this far into Hesper 7's dust-choked veins. Yet here he was, standing like some force of nature between her and the blade that promised to end everything. Thorax's lip curled, revealing jagged teeth. "Walk away, human. The law is clear." His grip on Erexa's arm tightened until her own screamed. Logan didn't blink. His voice came calm, steady, carrying a weight that made the heat-warped air seem to still. "How much?" The enforcer frowned, thrown off balance. "What?" "For the water," Logan said simply, nodding toward the flask half buried in the dust. "Name your price." A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. No one negotiated with Thorax. No one bargained for mercy. "The price is in blood," Thorax snarled, pressing the blade closer to Erexa's wrist. A bead of green blood welled on her skin, catching the sun like a drop of emerald fire. 15 credits. The merchant barked. Suddenly, from his stall, his greedy eyes lighting up. 15 for the flask, no more. Logan's gaze never left Thorax as he slid a hand to his belt pouch. "I'll pay 30. He flicked a small credit chip with casual precision. It spun through the air, glinting silver, before landing in the merchant's grasping fingers. 15 for the water, Logan continued, his voice like steel wrapped in silk, and 15 for the inconvenience. A crowd held its breath. Thorax's blade hovered, trembling slightly in his grip. For a heartbeat too long, Erexa thought he would choose blood over credits, law over life. Then, with a guttural snarl, he shoved her away so hard she stumbled into the dust. "Off-worlders," Thorax spat, sheathing his blade with a hiss. "Always thinking they can buy their way out of law. Next time, human, I'll take your hand instead." Logan didn't flinch. His piercing blue eyes followed Thorax as he stalked off, scattering onlookers with every thunderous step. Only when the enforcer disappeared into the heat did Logan move, bending low, his strong hands steady as they gripped Erexa's shoulders, anchoring her trembling form. "Easy," he said softly. His voice wasn't harsh now. It carried warmth, comfort. Erexa stared up at him, throat dry, words lost. In the harsh light, she could see details that made her pulse stumble. The lines etched at the corners of his eyes, not from age, but from squinting against alien suns. The roughness of his palms, calloused from a lifetime of work and war. Here. He reached down, retrieving the flask from the dust and pressing it into her hands as if it weighed nothing. "You'll need this more than I do." Her fingers closed around the metal, trembling. "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Logan's lips curved into a smile, not mocking, not cold, but something that carried quiet strength. "Because no one should lose a hand over a sip of water," he said simply, his eyes holding hers like twin oceans against the desert's cruel infinity. For a moment, the noise of the market faded. The searing heat, the watching eyes, the dust grinding beneath her knees, it all fell away, leaving only that unwavering blue gaze and a truth she didn't understand. Her heart thudded harder, as if it sensed something her mind could not. That? This man, this stranger, had just altered the path of her life with a few words and a single act of defiance. Behind them, murmurs rippled through the crowd like a rising storm. Names hissed on the wind. One word surfaced again and again, soft but sharp enough to slice through the heat. Human dot, and somewhere beyond the noise. In a chamber of power lined with marble and malice, Baron Hydrus leaned forward as a security. Feed flickered before him. A tall figure, shirtless and sunburned, standing over a fallen emerald-skinned girl. His lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. "So," the Baron murmured, voice like dry stone cracking under pressure. "The Waterbreaker walks among us once more." Outside, Logan helped Arexa to her feet, his hands strong but gentle. "Let's get you out of here," he said, scanning the restless crowd with an instinct honed by too many battlefields. "Thorax won't forget this. Neither will his friends." Arexa clutched the flask to her chest, like a sacred relic, her voice barely a whisper. "My father, he's sick. I have to get this to him." Logan's gaze flicked toward the horizon, where the twin suns bled fire into a sky the color of rust. "Then let's not keep him waiting," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. And as they moved through the market's narrow veins, shadows trailing long behind them, Arexa felt the strangest thing stir in her chest. Hope. Fragile. Flickering, yet alive. She didn't see the drones tracking their steps. She didn't see the enforcers regrouping, and she didn't hear the whisper carried on the heat. Waterbreaker, asterisk, the streets of Drywell twisted like veins carved into dead stone, choked with dust and shadows. Arexa led the way, clutching the metal. Flask against her chest so tightly, the sharp edge dug into her skin. The taste of fear clung to her tongue, bitter and metallic, as she cast quick glances over her shoulder. Logan walked at her side with a quiet confidence that unsettled her. He moved like a predator, relaxed, but ready to strike, his blue eyes scanning every alley, every rooftop. Even in this furnace of heat, where sweat slicked down his bare shoulders and dust clung to the curve of his jaw, he didn't seem weak or weary. He looked like someone who belonged anywhere, any battlefield, any wasteland, any world. Asterisk. They didn't speak at first. Words felt too heavy, too dangerous, in a place where silence was safety. The market's noise faded behind them, replaced by the low hum of distant generators and the soft moan of wind dragging across the barren flats. Finally, Arexa broke the silence. Her voice was rough, chafed by heat and fear. "You shouldn't have done that." Logan glanced at her, one brow lifting slightly. "Stopped him from cutting off your hand? Guess we have different definitions of shouldn't," she tightened, her grip on the flask swallowing hard. "Thorax won't forgive you. He'll come after you now, after both of us." "Let him try," Logan said, not boasting, just stating fact. There was a steel edge beneath the calm in his voice, the kind forged in fire and war. Arexa stared at him for a long moment, searching for the answer to the question that burned hotter than the suns above. "Who are you?" The silence stretched as they reached the edge of Drywell. Here, the ramshackle metal stalls gave way to crude stone shelters clinging to the canyon walls like barnacles. The air was cooler in the narrow passages, but the stench of dust and sickness was stronger. Arexa ducked into a low doorway carved into the rock face. Inside, the light dimmed to a muted amber glow cast by a single energy strip buzzing overhead. The space was small, claustrophobic, just 2 rooms with rough-hewn walls and a pallet laid out on the floor. On that pallet lay a man. Father. Arexa dropped to her knees, setting the flask beside him. Her hands trembled as she lifted his head. His skin, once a deep green, was pale and grayish now, his silver hair thin and brittle as cobwebs. His breathing was shallow, each exhale wheezing like air through cracked pipes. Logan stood in the doorway, his tall frame filling the space, his shadow spilling long across the floor. His gaze softened when it fell on the old man, and for the first time since she met him, Arexa saw something shift in his eyes, a quiet ache, like an old wound stirring. "Drink," she whispered, holding the flask to her father's cracked lips. He sipped weakly, the sound of water sliding past parched flesh loud in the silence. When he slumped back, his eyes flicked open violet like Arexa's, but dulled by exhaustion. They landed on Logan. "Who?" His voice rasped like dry leaves. "Who is this?" "A friend," Arexa said quickly, though the word felt strange. On her tongue, Logan moved closer, kneeling beside the pallet. "Name's Logan," he said quietly. "I can help him." Arexa's head snapped up, suspicion sparking. "How? You're no medic." Logan didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a small metallic device from his utility belt, a palm-sized scanner that pulsed with a soft blue glow. Arexa's breath caught. That wasn't Drywell tech. That wasn't even Hesperian. He swept the device over the old man's chest. A low hum filled the room, followed by a holographic projection of jagged lines and pulsing symbols. Logan frowned. "Pulmonary fibrosis. Advanced." Arexa blinked. The words meant nothing, but his tone did. It was grim, final. "Treatment." Logan hesitated, his jaw tightening. "He won't last a week." Arexa's throat closed. She had known. She had seen the truth in her father's trembling hands, in his shallow breaths. But hearing it aloud cracked something inside her. "I can stabilize him," Logan said, meeting her eyes. "Not here. My ship's med bay has what he needs." Arexa stared at him, her pulse pounding. "Why?" The word came out harsh, almost desperate. "Why would you do this? You've already risked enough for me." Logan's expression didn't waver. "Because I don't like watching people die when I can stop it." For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither could name. Then her father's weak voice cut through, pulling her back. "Logan Brandt," the old man whispered, his eyes sharpening just enough to hold meaning. "The water breaker." Arexa froze. The name hung in the air like a blade. She turned to Logan, her breath catching at the flicker in his eyes. Not surprise, but something darker. Something dangerous. Outside, the wind howled through the canyons, like a warning. And somewhere beyond, in a palace of stone and glass, Baron Hydrus watched the same name ripple through the Kun channels and smiled. The water breaker had come to Hesper 7. Asterisk. The suns were dying behind the jagged horizon when Logan finished securing the last of their meager supplies. The light bled crimson and gold through the dust, painting the canyon walls in shades of rust and blood. It felt like a warning. Arexa stood in the doorway of their shelter, the flask clutched tight in her hands, watching him with wary eyes. She had changed, just enough for him to notice. The fear in her gaze was still there, sharp as broken glass. But something else lingered now, something harder to name. Hope, maybe. Or trust. He turned, brushing the dust from his hands. "We leave now." Arexa blinked. "Now?" "My father can't stay here." Logan cut in gently, nodding toward the frail figure lying on the pallet. "Baron Hydrus won't. Ignore what happened today. When his enforcers don't come back with your hand, they'll come looking for answers. You and your father are targets now." She hated that he was right. The truth settled heavy in her chest, a weight that pressed on every breath. "You said you could help him," she said softly. Logan's gaze softened, though his voice stayed steady. "I can. My ship's got a med bay. Not top of the line, but better than anything this dustball can offer." Her pulse kicked hard. His ship, off-world. The idea was a dream and a threat all at once. She turned to her father, meaning to argue, but the old man's violet eyes were open, watching her with quiet resolve. "Go," Naren rasped, voice like wind over stone. "Take me to his ship. It's our only chance." Arexa swallowed the knot in her throat. "Can you walk?" "With help." A ghost of a smile tugged at his lips. "Don't look so surprised, child. I've walked through worse storms than this." Logan crouched, looping the old man's arm over his shoulders with effortless strength. "You lead," he said to Arexa, "and keep your head down." They slipped into the canyon's shadowed veins, weaving through paths carved by time and desperation. Logan bore most of Naren's weight without complaint, his stride steady despite the rugged terrain. Arexa stole glances at him when she thought he wouldn't notice. There was a calmness in him that unsettled her, not arrogance, but certainty. The kind of certainty you only earned after surviving too much. When the canyon opened to reveal the dry well spaceport, Arexa stopped dead. Her people whispered about ships, but she had never seen one up close. The Terran spirit squatted on the landing pad like some ancient predator, its hull scarred and patched, but humming with latent power. Faint blue lights pulsed along its seams. A heartbeat of machinery against the twilight. Logan keyed a code into the ramp console. With a hiss of hydraulics, the metal tongue descended, exhaling a breath of cool, filtered air that swept over Arexa like a miracle. She stepped inside and froze. The interior gleamed not luxurious, but impossibly clean, alive with quiet systems and the soft glow of screens. It felt like stepping into another world. "This way," Logan said, guiding Naren down a narrow corridor into a room lined with med tech that looked like sorcery. He lowered the old man onto a padded bed as scanners flickered to life, their hum filling the silence. Arexa hovered near the door, her pulse racing. This isn't just a ship," she whispered. Logan glanced at her, and in the glow of the med bay lights, the sharp planes of his face softened, shadows peeling back to reveal something almost human. Almost vulnerable. "It's home," he said quietly. Then, after a beat, "When you don't have a world anymore, you make your own." The words hit her like a stone to still water, rippling through places inside her she had long thought dry and dead. For a breath, neither of them moved. His blue eyes held hers across the room, and in that gaze she felt something vast, a depth like the oceans he had once spoken of. The ones she had thought were only myths. The silence fractured with the soft hiss of the med bed ceiling around. Her father. Logan turned away, his voice brisk again. "He'll stabilize in a few hours. In the meantime." He looked at her, and this time there was a flicker of something else in his eyes. A shadow. "You and I need to talk." Arexa's throat went dry. "About what?" "About why Baron Hydrus wants me dead," he said, stepping closer until the hum of the med bay faded under the pounding of her pulse. "And why I came to Hesper 7 in the first place." She didn't answer. Couldn't, because deep down, some instinct whispered that whatever he was about to tell her would shatter the fragile ground beneath her feet. Outside, as suns drowned in blood-red dusk, and far beyond the canyon walls, Hydrus's ships were already moving. The Terran spirit cut across the sky like a scar of steel and fire, engines thrumming low as Logan guided her away from Drywell's crumbling veins and into the vast emptiness beyond. Below, the desert stretched endless and broken, a graveyard of cracked earth and forgotten bones, lit by the cold glow of twin moons rising over Hesper 7's scorched spine. Arexa sat strapped into the co-pilot's chair, fingers clenched so tight around the armrests that her knuckles throbbed. She had never left the ground before, never felt the planet fall away beneath her feet like sand slipping through trembling hands. The sight of it, the entire horizon bending beneath them, shrinking, spinning, stole her breath and replaced it with something wild. Fear, wonder, both at once. Logan noticed. He didn't say anything at first, just adjusted the controls with effortless precision, his big hands steady on the throttles. The cockpit lights painted his skin in hues of blue and gold, carving shadows along his jaw, making him look like something sculpted from dusk and fire. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but steady, a sound that anchored her against the dizzying pull of the void outside. "First time off-world?" Arexa swallowed, eyes still fixed on the window. "First time? Anywhere." Her voice was husky, dry like the dust she'd lived in all her life. He glanced at her then, one corner of his mouth curving in a smile that wasn't quite smug, wasn't quite soft. Then brace yourself. It gets stranger from here. She tore her gaze from the view long enough to glare, though the effect was ruined by the rapid beat of her heart. What's stranger than this? Logan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he tapped a series of commands into the console, bringing up a holographic display that bloomed between them like a sphere of blue fire. It wasn't the map of Hesper 7 she expected. It was bigger, vast, an entire sector, threaded with shimmering lines like veins of light. Alexa frowned. What is this? Logan leaned back in his chair, his eyes locking with hers. And in that moment, the easy charm she'd glimpsed in him before fell away, stripped down to steel and purpose. It's why I'm here, he said quietly. It's why Baron Hydrus wants me dead, and why your father knew my name. Her pulse thudded, heavy in her ears. You're going to explain now. It wasn't a question. Logan nodded slowly. The great deep. You've heard the stories? Alexa stared at him, memory flickering old tales whispered in the heat, myths of oceans buried in darkness, enough water to drown every desert. They're just legends? His gaze didn't waver. No, they're real. He tapped the hologram, and one of the glowing lines pulsed brighter, rippling like liquid light. There's an aquifer 2 kilometers beneath Scarlet Mesa. Massive. But it's not just an aquifer. It's part of something older. Bigger. He zoomed out, and the web expanded until Alexa couldn't breathe. Dozens of worlds, all stitched together by the same glowing veins. Her voice was barely a whisper. What is this? An ancient network, Logan said. Terraforming tech from a civilization so old, it's practically dust now. Whoever built it had the power to sustain entire planets. Hesper 7, it's sitting on a node of that network. And if we can activate it, if we can wake it up, his blue eyes burned with something fierce, something unstoppable. We're not just talking about saving your father. We're talking about ending water wars across half the sector. The words hit her like a storm, ripping through everything she thought she knew. The thirst, the barrens, the endless fight for drops. In the dust gone, if what he said was true. But that truth was too big, too heavy, to hold all at once. She forced air into her lungs, her voice sharp, shaky. And what does any of this have to do with me? For the first time, Logan hesitated. Then he reached into his belt pouch and pulled out a small crystal chip, the one her father had hidden for years. He set it on the console between them, its surface flickering with violet light that mirrored the shade of her eyes. Because your father wasn't just a water prospector, Logan said quietly. He was the water finder, the one who mapped the first nodes of this network decades ago. Hydrus nearly killed him for it. He leaned closer, his gaze locked on hers. And you, Alexa, you're his daughter, which means you might have what he had. The gift. She stared, shaking her head. I'm no water finder. You're not just anything, Logan cut in, his voice low, relentless. You felt it, haven't you? The pull. The way you knew where to find water when no one else could. That's why you risked your life in the market. Because you knew that flask would be there. Her breath stuttered. She wanted to deny it. Wanted to call him mad. But deep down, in the marrow of her bones, something stirred. A memory. A sensation like a whisper in stone. A psalm in the dust. Before she could answer, the ship's sensors beeped sharply, breaking the spell. Logan's head snapped to the console, his jaw tightening. Damn it. Alexa's stomach dropped. What? Hydrus's scouts, Logan growled. We're not alone anymore. Through the viewport, the darkness erupted with distant sparks engines igniting, ships rising like fangs from the desert floor. The Baron wasn't letting them go without a fight, and Scarlet Mesa was still 100 clicks away. ChatGPT did. The Terran spirit shuddered as warning lights bled red across the cockpit, alarms screaming like angry ghosts. Outside, the darkness, split with streaks of plasma fire as Hydrus's ships descended sleek, fang-like craft cutting through the dust-stained sky. Arexa gripped the armrest, her breath shallow, her heart pounding in her ears. "They're firing on us." "Not yet," Logan growled, his hands a blur across the controls. "Warning shots. Hydrus wants us alive for now." The ship jolted as a blast grazed the hull, sending a metallic shriek rippling through the frame. Sparks rained from a console, the acrid scent of burnt wiring filling the air. Logan's jaw clenched. Or maybe not. The engines roared as he dove the Terran Spirit into a canyon so narrow the stone teeth scraped the hull. Plasma fire sizzled overhead, searing the rock, showering molten fragments into the abyss. Arexa pressed back against her seat, eyes wide, heart slamming as the world blurred into streaks of crimson and shadow. "Hold on," Logan barked, yanking the O-card. The ship banked so sharply, her vision went white, then snapped back as they shot into open air again straight toward the Scarlet Mesa. It loomed like a wound in the land, its rust-colored cliffs towering against the starlit void. Beneath that scarlet skin lay the myth, the great deep. Salvation or death? Maybe both. They'll tear us apart before we land. Arexa shouted over the wail of alarms. "Not if we make them choose," Logan said, fingers flying across the console. "Strap in. Hard." Before she could ask, he slammed the sequence that dropped the Spirit into a controlled spiral dive, engines screaming as gravity seized them. Like a predator, Hydrus's ships followed, plasma bolts carving fiery scars through the night. At the last possible second, Logan leveled the ship and slammed the thrusters. The Spirit slammed into the canyon floor, skidding across stone, kicking up clouds of crimson dust before grinding to a halt a breath from the cliff wall. Systems flickered, alarms wailed, then died, plunging them into eerie silence broken only by the hiss of cooling metal. "Move!" Logan was already on his feet, grabbing a pulse rifle and a survival pack. He tossed another weapon toward Arexa, who caught it clumsily, her fingers slick with sweat. "We're going out there?" she gasped. He gave her a look that was part grim, part wild. "Unless you want to explain yourself to Hydrus from a holding cell. The cave system's close. We make it inside. They can't track us." Arexa hesitated for half a heartbeat, then nodded. Together, they plunged into the night, the canyon swallowing them whole. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper, until the roar of engines above faded into distant thunder. They reached the fissure. Logan's scans had marked a narrow slit in the cliff, barely wide enough to squeeze through. Inside, darkness wrapped around them like a living thing, broken only by the thin glow of Logan's shoulder light. The walls were slick, veined with mineral scars that glimmered like frozen blood. For what felt like hours, they descended crawling, climbing, following the winding throat of the mesa deeper and deeper. Then, without warning, the passage opened into a vast chamber. Arexa froze. Her breath hitched. It wasn't stone. Not entirely. The walls gleamed with smooth surfaces, etched with faint geometric lines glowing a pale blue. Veins of crystal arched overhead like frozen rivers of light. And there, in the center of the cavern, sprawled a lattice of crystalline conduits, each pulsing faintly, carrying within them what looked like water, Arexa whispered. Her voice trembled. "Logan, it's alive." "Not alive," Logan murmured, stepping forward, all softening the hard edge of his voice. "Engineered, designed." His light swept the chamber, revealing patterns too perfect, too deliberate. For nature, this isn't just an aquifer. It's a machine. Arexa couldn't breathe. The air vibrated against her skin, a low hum threading through the stone. And beneath it, Something else, a whisper that wasn't sound but sensation, calling from deep within her bones. She moved without thinking, drawn toward the nearest conduit. "Alexa," Logan warned, but his voice felt far away, muffled by the thrumming in her veins. She reached out, fingers brushing the crystalline surface, and the world shattered. A flood of light seared through her mind, blinding, beautiful. Images slammed into her consciousness. Oceans spanning horizons, towers rising from emerald seas, skies filled with storms of silver rain. A voice ancient, layered like the depths. Of time whispered through her blood. Heir of the founders. Guardian of flow. Awaken the deep. Her knees buckled. Logan caught her, his arms strong and warm against the cold shimmer of the conduit. "Alexa, talk to me." Her eyes snapped open, glowing faintly violet in the darkness. I see it." She gasped, clutching his arms. "It's not just water, Logan, it's everywhere. The deep connects worlds. If we wake it, if we restore it." Her voice broke on a sob that was half wonder, half terror. "We can end the droughts. We can save them all." Logan's jaw tightened, his eyes blazing with the same fire that had driven him across 1,000 deserts. "Then that's what we'll do." A tremor tore through the chamber, a deep growl from the bones of the world. Cracks spidered across the conduits. Water hissed, steaming into the air. The hum rose to a howl. "Or die trying," Alexa whispered. Logan's hand closed over hers, anchoring her against the chaos. "Not today," he said fiercely. "Not while I'm breathing." They ran, the cavern collapsing around them in a storm of stone and light, the whisper of the deep chasing them like a tide. Behind them, the network stirred, awakening after eons of silence. And far above, in the black void beyond Hesper 7, the Coalition fleet picked up the first pulse. A signal that would change the fate of worlds. The end.